For many of us, our first experience with Mexican beer included a beach and a squeeze of lime. But for the next step, you gotta go beyond the beach. Now, Tecate for sure is an iconic beverage here in Baja. But what a lot of people don't know is that it's named after the town of Tecate, right here on the US-Mexico border. Now, full disclosure, Tecate is owned by Cerveza y Mariscos, which also owns Bohemia, one of our show sponsors. Back in 1944, Alberto Aldrete started making this crisp brew, and well, right away its popularity spread all across Mexico and into the US. These days, Mexican beer all over Mexico is starting to expand into the smaller craft microbrews. In Baja, there's an especially lively scene. There's this hip little pub called Ultramarino in Ensenada. It's owned by chef Alain Henchi, and it's focused on promoting small breweries. Chef Alain invited me to taste some of the local craft beers and to see how they pair with the area's stellar seafood.
Well, Rick, we're gonna try the Cucapá,
Okay.
Clásica. This is an ale beer.
So we have a lager and an ale.
An ale.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Now that's delicious. This is what I think of more as kind of the classic Mexican beers.
It's more the Mexican style.
Mexican style,
And
light,
this is
crisp. This is definitely a
different
microbrew.
brewery.
So I think it's wonderful to have beer with light food, especially when you're thinking about beach kind of food and stuff like that.
This is perfect with ceviche.
Alain served 3 types of ceviche. Sea snail with pasilla chili, scallop ceviche with salt, pepper, and lime, and some octopus ceviche that was made with dark beer. This one's too light for it.
That's more from, I think, for the scallop.
For the scallop one. For me, the stronger flavors of the ale matched beautifully with the octopus ceviche. The lighter lager beer went so well with the scallops. Our next pairing was a couple of fuller-bodied, more complex beers.
Amarga. How do you say amarga in English?
Bitter. It's got that hoppy bitterness at the end. This is way lighter even though the color is darker. Now, what kind of food were you thinking about going with this one?
I suggest the oyster taco for this.
Now, tell me which beer I should choose to go with my first bite of oyster taco.
I suggest the chupacabras.
That is delicious. That's delicious. Okay. You're a smart man. You're a smart man. That bit of bitterness from the hops at the end, that's all perfect to cut through this one. So where are we going to go from here? You have darker beers, heavier beers than these?
We can try the Bufadora from Tijuana.
Yes.
And the Obscura from Cucapá.
Okay, let's go. Elaine thought that some baby clams steamed in beer would pair well with those darker brews.
Try the bread.
I don't know where to go, to bread or to the beer. Do you think the stronger flavor beer?
I think with this could be the Bufadora.
That's a perfect combination. You knew exactly what you were going for. That's a great match. So do you think this is going to catch on all through Mexico? Do you think that we're going to be seeing a lot of microbrew beers in lots of places in Mexico?
Right now in Ensenada, I think with the wine is very close. The idea from make wine and make beer that are very close. So I think microbreweries in Ensenada in 5 years are another thing.
It's so wonderful how around Ensenada there are so many artisanal food products being made, because it's certainly the wine region of Mexico, the beer region of Mexico, and also so many food products like olive oil and wonderful fish and shellfish. You know, this is a place that is just rich with great food. Warm clam ceviche. It sounds kind of unusual, but if you think about it as clams that are cooked with a little beer and then finished off with some lime juice, you sort of get the idea of where we're headed with this particular recipe. Now, when you buy clams, you'll want to store them in your refrigerator over ice just to keep them super cold so that you don't lose any of them. And then the second step is to put them into a bowl, cover them with cold tap water. Now, clams don't really like fresh water, so they'll sort of get stirred up a little bit. And over the next half hour or so, they'll spit out all the sand that they might have inside of them. I'm going to take them out of the water now, put them into a colander, and you'll see how much sand is at the bottom. Sometimes there's a fair amount, sometimes just a little hint of it. But there's just a little bit down in the bottom here. I can feel it. Now I'll give these guys a scrub just to make sure that they're clean before we put them into the pot and cook them. Now on to the cooking of these clams. The first thing that I'm going to do is to melt a little butter into a pot that'll comfortably hold all of those clams. A couple of tablespoons that I'll put over a kind of medium heat. Now while that's melting, I'm going to cut up some green chili and garlic. And with this jalapeno that I've got here, I'm going to cut the stem end off of it. Cut it open. I could cut out the veins and the seeds if I wanted to make it a little less spicy. But in this particular preparation, I want all of the spice of the jalapeno. So I'm just going to cut it up, veins, seeds, and all. All of that's going to go into the pot with the butter here, and we'll cook it until the garlic is aromatic and the chilies begin to soften. That'll just take a minute or two. Now, about a half a cup of beer. You're looking for something like a kind of crisp Pilsner for this particular preparation. Remember, there's lime juice that's going in at the end here. And to that, I'm going to add about a half a cup of chicken broth. There's no need to do a homemade chicken broth for this. A good quality store-bought one will do just fine. When that all comes to a simmer, and boy is it incredibly aromatic and delicious smelling right now, I'm going to add the clams to it. And these guys will go into the pot. Cover them and it'll take about 3 minutes for them to cook, just enough time for me to juice some lime and chop up a little bit of cilantro. Yep, they've all opened up. I'm going to take them out and divide them between 4 bowls while I let all this delicious juice reduce by about half. Okay, now the final seasonings for this. I've got lime juice, a good handful of chopped cilantro. Now ladle that into the little cups with our clams there to make what I think is going to be a great appetizer. I've recently been thinking a lot about trying my hand at beer making. So I asked Jared Rubin, the head pub brewer at Goose Island and one of my favorite brewmasters, to step me through the process from beginning to end. Jared. Now, I have never brewed beer in my life.
Okay.
I've tasted some beer in my life, but never brewed it. And so I need to learn exactly what the steps are so I can appreciate it better. So walk me through it. Where do we start?
Well, first thing we're going to do is we have to make a recipe.
Okay. I'm good at making recipes.
I know that.
Okay.
So the way we create our recipe is probably similar to how you create your salsa. You got your raw ingredients.
Yeah.
For us, our base malt here is going to be pale. So I'll give you some of that.
Okay.
And it's really important that we taste everything before we start our process.
Okay, so you just taste this in this raw steak.
Delicious. Like cereal.
Like muesli.
Like muesli.
Okay.
Like muesli.
Okay.
The pale is going to be our base malt, and
Okay.
this chocolate and this caramel malt is a specialty, so we don't have to really use
specialty
this much.
malt. So this is your base, and then you add all these others to create different flavors.
Absolutely.
What's the next step?
The next thing we do is we use this auger right here, which is essentially a grain elevator. We pour our malt in there.
Okay, the mixture that we've made.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we pour it in here, and it travels up to our mash tun over here. In the mash tun, we essentially make a giant pot of oatmeal. You've got your grains, you've got your hot water.
Okay.
So you want to take a look?
I do. I want to see what's going on in this tank. Okay.
So this is all our mash.
It does look like oatmeal. You're exactly right.
It smells like some fresh grains and bread. What's going on here is the sparge process, and essentially
Sparge?
Sparge, yes.
Okay.
It's
one,
brewing.
another one of the brewing terms I don't know.
It's a brewing term for a hot shower. And so the grain gets a hot shower at a temperature of between 168 and 170, and that hot water trickles down through the bed of grain, all the way down to the bottom where there's a drain.
Yeah.
It goes from that drain all the way back to our grant, our container, where you'll see the wort or the malt tea. It transfers through this pipe right here,
Right.
all the way down into our brew kettle.
Okay, the mash tun, the brew kettle.
And it's actually a giant kettle. Underneath you actually have a fire, a direct fire system.
Okay.
So it'd just be if you had a giant pot.
Okay.
After we've transferred it to a certain level, we're going to start our boil. And similar to cooking, we're reducing.
Concentrating the flavors.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And our seasonings in the brewing world,
You guys are so simple. Even though you use strange words, it's so simple.
So
Okay.
here's some beautiful Hallertau.
Oh my, the aroma.
Beautiful.
Oh, wow. That makes my mouth water. Jared explained that after the hops are added, once at the start of the boil for bitterness and once at the end for aromatics, everything then moves over to fermentation. So this is the fermentation tank.
Yes.
We got that boiled down wort that is all hopped out, pumped over here. How does it ferment?
Well, once we've transferred it over here, the yeast, which we're hitched in there, is going to start eating the sugars, which we got from the grain.
But you have to add yeast
Oh,
to
yes.
it to make that fermentation happen.
Yes, but it happens within 24 hours.
Oh, okay. After the fermentation, where does it go?
The last stop is the bright tank.
Bright tank?
The bright tank, and that's where the beer is carbonated.
Oh, okay. Well, you lost me on that part of it because I was thinking about doing it at my house. I don't have like a
some
bright
home brewing.
tank. I was thinking about doing some. You've taught me now, okay? So what would I use instead of a bright tank?
Well, you don't need a bright tank. All you need is some bottles, and you'll transfer your fermented beer into bottles, and it's still actively fermenting. So once you seal it up, it's got a little bit of sugar in there,
Right.
and in a couple weeks, you'll have some nice sparkly beer.
Now, one of the things that I think is really unique about your approach to beer making is you're not just looking for a beer that's going to taste good, but it's going to taste good with food.
Oh yeah, we brew beer for food. So when we're coming up with a recipe, I think about what dishes do I want to have this with.
Cool. That to me, as a chef, that's music to my ear.